Well, hello and welcome to episode 470 of the Plain Talking UK podcast. I am Carlos, and in this week's packed show, we've got some news on, well, it's emotional pet time again. The emotional pets are back on board. We've also got news on another Dreamliner that is facing the chop. In the military news this week, well, we haven't got any military news this week, but don't panic, because Armando is going to be bringing us a very special interview indeed in the military segment this week. And also joining me across the village over here in Suffolk, where it is slightly mild outside this evening, wouldn't you say, Matt?
Indeed. Speaking of emotional support animals, hello.
Mr. Matt Smith, who has joined me a few times this week in my place of work for dinner. It's been
Indeed.
Quite nice having you around for dinner, man.
What he's confusing you with is the person who's bringing his sandwich from the canteen before. My invite is only so that he doesn't have to come and get his sandwich himself. I'm just saying.
Let's make this clear that when Matt walks to where my warehouse is, he walks straight past a very nice cave.
It is a very nice cave, yes. Sue does a sterling job.
Yes,
Nev, it's a shame you didn't come to Midwich in the end.
Yes, I could have popped in for a coffee and a bun.
Indeed, absolutely.
Yes, joining us always as always this week. He's back. He's the guy who really does put the seat 1A in BA. It's Neville Bounds.
Yeah, there's no ranting this week because I've not been flying, so that makes a change, doesn't it? I got it out of my system last week, though. My goodness me, that was a tough one. Just lots of driving this week, just burning lots of AdBlue, going up and down the M40, M23, M25, the whole lot. But flying again on Tuesday to Stockholm for the week, so there'll be plenty of opportunity for ranting about BA's boarding policy.
Ooh.
Oh, goody. Can't wait.
Yeah. But you'll be back flying again next week, though, Nev. So I've heard.
Yes.
Yes.
I am. But unfortunately, I won't be on the show on Friday next week because I will be still in the air, I would imagine. So, but nonetheless, I'm looking forward to actually about 21 degrees in Sweden, which would be quite nice next week. So, and sunny too. So that'll be good.
Nice.
Excellent. Look forward to a report on the flight, Nev, as always. Yes. And joining us back again this week, our associate producer on the show is, of course, Nick Codling. Hello, Nick. How are you this week?
Hi, Carlos. I'm pretty good, thanks. And nice to be back on. I was away last week, so good to be back with you guys, and looking forward to a good show.
Brilliant. And Armando is not with us this week, but we went through our list of extensive guests that we have for the show. And obviously, the guy who always seems to just kind of get to the top of the list every time is, of course, Andy, our very own.
It must be a very short list. A very short list. Very low calibre as well.
I wasn't quite sure where he was going with that one, Andy. I've got to be honest.
Andy, how the devil are you?
Well, apart from being full of cold and sinusitis, I'm all right. I'm good, thank you. It's nice to be on again.
Thanks for joining us. How's things with the Airbus fleet then, and you?
Well, I haven't been flying for well over a week now because I'm all bunged up. But I'm glad I missed Monday, which I'm sure we're probably going to talk about.
Was there an event on that? Did something happen on Monday by any chance?
I don't know. I was lying on the couch watching Netflix when I found out. But
impeccable timing.
Something did happen. But no, thank you very much for having me on again. It's always a pleasure. I always like being the super sub.
It's good to have you on, Andy, as always. But we have got a book quiz this week as well. So for those of you who want to win yourself a book, we have got a book up for grabs this week. Which is a pretty cool book, actually.
Indeed. Now, while we were talking about Armando, by the way, although he isn't here, he has very kindly sent us a little check-in video of what he's been up to this week.
Hey guys, here we are. Nice Friday afternoon. I'm in the Cub, just going to take it up flying, just change the oil in it, change it every 50 hours or so. As you can imagine, this is going to be an apology video. I can't be on the show today. As usual, this Friday afternoon, I am going to be flying. This is one of those weekends where I'm actually flying all the things. So taking this thing up, taking the Hawker up for a trip, and then the Pilatus over to the Outer Banks of North Carolina. for a trip on early Saturday morning. So a little bit of all over flying. This week we don't have any military for you, but what we do have is a great interview with Nick from Timber Tiger Aircraft. Now, I found these guys on social media. A lot of you that went up to Oshkosh probably saw this their beautiful replica of the Ryan ST, STA. They're calling it the STL. But these guys are producing 3 wonderful home-built kits that are just take you back to the vintage era of aviation. As soon as I saw it, I immediately fell in love with it, and I actually thought to myself, maybe this is actually the kit that I'm going to build. So either way, we don't have military for you. Sorry, Jonathan Warner, but we do have this great interview with Nick. I hope you guys enjoy it. If nothing else, make sure you go check out their website, and right on their splash page, you're going to see just this amazing airplane, plus their Facebook page has some great pictures. So everybody, take care, have a great weekend, and we'll catch you next week.
So if you are listening to that in the audio podcast, you absolutely need to take yourselves to our YouTube page and watch that, because the video what Armando took there, I think he's invested in some new, I think he's got one of those new is it a 360 GoPro?
I think he has.
Mr. 360.
Yeah, and honestly, the video is absolutely fantastic. Armando literally does take the word "cool" and smacks us around the face with it.
He oozes cool.
Yeah,
oozes it.
Although I'm a bit worried. I'm not going to lie. I'm a bit worried about his trucker's suntan, though. That's the only thing I'm a bit worried
I like
about.
that. I'm going to start flying the Airbus like that. I'm going to open the window, just stick one arm out, bombing down the runway in Manchester. Beautiful.
I would love to see that.
Nev, you're not tempted to do that in the banana?
I can do that, but you get a bit of sort of buffering, actually. Buffeting, I mean.
Oh, I see.
Is that below 150 miles an hour now?
Kilometres per hour. or as we say, 120 plus VAT.
Lovely, good. I like that. And I suppose on the bike, Nick, it's just all leathers and just like sort of not an option, I guess.
I'm not sure where your thought process is.
Okay.
Actually, Bill in the chat room. Bill in the chat room said, "Where is Armando going to get the time to build a home build?"
Oh, he'll make time. There's no two ways about that.
He does. So, talking of chat room, I'm going to say a big hello to everyone who's joined us in the chat room this evening. I know some of you guys were in there really early today. I'm going to say hello to Richard Adams. Good evening. Mazouz, our local listener Mazouz, Kareem's in there as well. Lee Davies is in there. I bet he's got a pint on the go. Hobby Time is also in the chat room. Our very own Nick Codling's in there. Good to see you in there, Nick. Captain Cruz, hello to you as well. We've got Andy Wilson. Don't know who that guy is. Yeah, Lee Davis is definitely on the beer this evening. Good to see. John Jester, our resident cargo pilot, is in the chat room as well this evening. Hello to Sturman. He's busy having a camping trip this weekend, so he's watching us from the comfort of his car this evening. There he is. He's watching from the dashboard there. Who else we got in here? Richard Adams, main man Micah, Uncle Micah, good to see you as well. Masha, hello to you, Masha. Nice to see you. Aaron P, hello to you. Our very own Jenny in Rome. She's also tuned in this evening.
Coming to Duxford as well, by the way.
She's coming to Duxford, yeah. Forward to more info on Duxford later on the show, so make sure you watch that. Captain Ridiculous Wits is also in there. Good to see you in there as well. And don't forget, if you are listening to our voices on the audio podcast that you might be downloading via the various platforms, don't forget, if you want to see just how stunning Nev is in his pressed uniform every week, don't forget to tune into YouTube and find us on there. Or if you fancy seeing just what a absolute legend of an Airbus pilot looks like, you can come and join us and see what Andy looks like.
Everybody is very welcome to throw sharp objects at Carlos, by the way, if you feel obliged. That's fine.
Actually, Andy, I will say the beard is coming on well, I think, since we've last seen you.
Oh no, that's been trimmed today. It was about 2.5 inches long before this morning.
Tidy.
I looked a bit. I looked like I could have lived on the street, so I thought I'd best get it tidied up.
It's difficult to know where your beard finished and the windshield of the mic started.
Good point.
Yeah.
Would have been.
Oh my.
Oh dear. Well, we have got lots to get through, as we said, plus our book giveaway this week. But it's time for some commercial news, if everyone's ready.
Certainly are.
Let's go.
The captain has turned on the seatbelt light. Please take your seats and fasten your seatbelts.
So, kicking off this week's first commercial news stories from the dailymail.co.uk. It's where we always get all our great aviation stories from. And we're back on the subject of emotional support animals again. We haven't had a story like that for a while, have we, on the show? Airlines are cracking down on unusual emotional support animals again, including peacocks, pigs, and has seen blind passengers with guide dogs as well being banned from boarding aircraft. New rules rolled out back in January 21 to crack down on unusual animals being passed off as trained service animals has faced a backlash. In 2018, the Department of Transportation received 116 complaints from people with disabilities regarding service animals. By 2022, the number had risen to 451 complaints. Recent years have seen passengers attempting to bring peacocks, pigs, miniature horses, and even turkeys on their flights. The Department of Transportation's new rules to crack down on the use of unusual emotional support animals has made instead flying inaccessible to some blind passengers. The new rules, rolled out in January 2021, were designed to stem the rise of untrained pets being used as service or emotional support animals on flights by requiring passengers to complete forms about their pets' training in advance. Recent years have seen passengers attempt to bring peacocks, pigs, miniature horses, as we said, and turkeys. However, blind passengers have claimed they are now encountering more pushback around taking their much-needed service animals aboard flights since the regulations came to force. Elizabeth Schoen, 21, who is blind, told the Washington Post that her guide dog Eva was barred from a flight to Boston last March. Schoen claims she attempted to submit the necessary form online 4 days before her JetBlue flight, but the portal rejected it. Advised by customer services to bring the paperwork to the airport instead, which she did. However, the airline staffs told her that she had not submitted the form online, and therefore her dog was turned away. They said, she said, if you're denying my dog, you're denying me, she told the Post. Sharon missed her flight and spent around $400 to fly the next day with a different airline. She said it made me even more scared every time I go to the airport. It's like, are they going to stop me, she said. Even though I know I'm approved, I still feel pressure like I'm under the microscope. A spokesperson for JetBlue told the Post that roughly 80% of the applications are approved. Customers who do not submit in advance may not be able to travel. So Shone's not alone. Department of Transportation data shows that the number of service animal-related complaints from people with disabilities have more than doubled since the regulations took effect. Back in 2018, the agency received 116 complaints, and as we said, by the 2022, the number had more than doubled that. The issue of untrained animals on flights is being used to pass as emotional support pets came into prominence when a Brooklyn-based artist, Venko, tried to take her peacock on board a United Airlines flight at Newark Airport back in January 2018. The peacock, called Dexter, nice name for a peacock, was not allowed on board the aircraft, and the spokesperson for the airline told the Daily Mail back at the time that the traveller had been repeatedly told in advance she would not be able to have the bird on the plane. Now, the story does go on, but you know, I personally, of all the flights I've ever been on, I've never seen, well, I've never even seen a dog, to be fair. I mean, Nev, I mean, you do the most flying out of, well, apart from Armando, obviously, but you do the most kind of commercial passenger flying. How many times have you seen an actual pet on board an aircraft?
Seen a cat and a dog so far in 40 years of flying, so that's not too much, is it? But as Aaron P says in the chat room, the US has quite different rules regarding what you can bring on the aircraft with you, it would seem.
Yeah, this doesn't happen in Europe. It's not allowed.
No. But yeah, I have actually had in fact, I was just thinking about that. Those were internal US flights. I've just realised I took an American Airlines flight and a United flight that I took. So yeah, they weren't within Europe. So yeah. The trouble is, whatever I say about this, I'm going to offend somebody. So I'll pass the baton on to somebody else. How about that?
Look, I think it's a few spoiling it for the many, as usual here, and stringent rules being brought in for people who do need them, such as guide dogs, etc. But come on, bringing a pig on board, really?
I mean,
have you got any pets, Andy?
I used to have a dog, and I'm about to get another one now. Actually, yeah.
Oh.
So I'm a dog man. Yeah.
So you don't fancy taking your dog when you get it on the flight deck with you, then?
No, because it would just cause absolute chaos. The last thing you want is an animal jumping in your lap as you're trying to land.
Well, I mean, absolutely, yeah. I mean, I don't know. It's sort of a difficult, you know, as you say, it's the minority spoiling it for the majority again, isn't it? And it's one of those sort of. What I am disappointed about, though, is, and I do get that, is, I mean, like, in terms of like support, I mean, the role of a guide dog is very, very clear, and that's all very straightforward. And I'm not trying to say that your needs, you know, that you're obtaining, you know, for comfort or whatever. I mean, you know, there are scenarios, for example, I mean, I'm aware of a situation with a friend of mine who is autistic, and there is there's a dog that goes with him on a flight because it helps, but, you know, so again, in the role of emotional support. So I acknowledge that there are genuine circumstances where an animal could be very beneficial to, frankly, everyone on the flight, because if said, you know, okay, so I'm using the autistic child as an example. I appreciate that's not the best example, but it's the first one that sort of like comes to mind, if you like.
In the case of a dog, Matt, it's trainable. A trainable animal.
Yeah. I'm not sure how much emotional support can be offered by a peacock.
Well, exactly. You can't train a peacock, a pig, a turkey.
Yeah.
You can't train any of them to be useful. They're animals. At the end of the day, they're animals, and they don't belong on an aircraft.
Yeah,
on the hold.
No, apart from in the hold, right? Okay, fair enough.
Airliners carry animals all the time.
Indeed, and I think it's as I say, I appreciate it's a tricky one that we probably should walk away from before one of us says something that gets us into a whole heap of trouble, as Nev said. But I can see that, you know, there's a strong argument on both sides of the fence, as it were.
The good thing for the USA, where this is an issue, is there's no bodies of water between the east coast and the west coast that you can't drive, so the problem's fixed.
Well, quite. Oh, I don't know if I can.
I have something different. I have emotional support pieces of aircraft.
Right, okay. Right. I mean,
Do you take them with you on the aircraft?
yeah, quite possibly. Yeah, indeed.
That would be slightly.
I'm going to offer this as something that Nev has just thrown into the group here. I don't know what that. I mean, that's one option, isn't it?
No, that would definitely get you an upgrade into, well,
I don't know, would it? You know, for those of you listening to the audio version, I've just shown a picture of, but essentially of a person in a, well, I don't know, it's supposed to be a shark, isn't it? An emotional support shark. Yes.
It was Fergal Sharky. Actually.
What was it? Right, very good. Okay, boom.
I do like what Mazusa said. I think we're all keen on emotional support wings. Yes, I'm a big fan of wings on aircraft.
Right. Chicken wings are my personal favourite, if I'm honest. Ideally with a spicy sauce of some description.
Oh, nice. Anyway, moving on. Matt, you have got the next story, and a bit. Well, I don't know what to think about this story. But...
No, I indeed. So I'm not quite sure why I've got this one, other than the fact it's a Ryanair story. So Daily Record, which is a site that you'll only ever find clickbait on, if I'm brutally honest. Dailyrecord.co.uk. It's from Scotland, apparently. Ryanair passenger lassoed by seatbelt urges airlines to stop embarrassing plus-size flyers. A plus-size beautician was left embarrassed after being lassoed by her seatbelt on a Ryanair flight from Glasgow to Cork, Ireland. Katie Higgins said that she had barely an inch of room in her belt, which was cutting into her stomach. The 33-year-old was left extremely uncomfortable for the journey to visit family on the Emerald Isle on Friday the 11th of August. She said that she would have asked for an extender belt, but she would have asked for an extender belt had it been any tighter, but feels that she shouldn't have to, since she matches the profile of an average UK woman at dress size 16, and airlines should ensure seatbelts are big enough. Curvy Katie said that this isn't delusional, and she knows that as a bigger woman, she was just stunned to find that her belt almost didn't fit, and she'd recently lost 2 stone in weight. As she said, shorter belts are a safety issue that Ryanair and other airlines should be dealing with without the onus being on the passengers. Right, I'm going to stop reading that story because it's making me angry. I'm really sorry. I'm going to refuse to read it any further. It's not embarrassing to ask for a seatbelt extension thingy. I ask for it all the time. Yes, I can get the normal seatbelt around me with no issue, but I take my comfort into consideration when I'm in there, and I've never had anything other than a lovely and warm reception on EasyJet and indeed on Ryanair when I've asked for one. There's been no tutting, nothing of any of the sort. They just supplied me with the belt. I'm comfortable. I'm also safe and secure. This lady needs to grow up. Sorry.
There's a line further down, though, that makes things even more confusing.
I don't want to read it.
Go on, Andy.
Read it.
Katie says that her confusion only heightened on her flight home when she was given a seatbelt that fitted fine, leading her to complain that flying with Ryanair is like potluck.
I don't.
Okay.
Okay.
It's a standard size seatbelt. They're all made the same size.
Yeah. Okay. Maybe she didn't eat much. Perhaps she'd had a very, very good poo or something before she got on the flight. I mean, I don't really understand what the relevance of that is. I really don't.
Dear.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
No, we'll talk about that airline again.
Oh no, we'll set Nev off. Let's not do that.
Anyway, moving on. Next story. Nev, you have...
just before we move on. When I was flying to Barcelona last year, there's quite a large American gentleman across the other aisle from me who just asked the crew, "Oh, have you got one of those fat belts, please?"
Oh, wow, okay.
Hey, at least he knows.
Yeah. And everybody's going, "Yeah, here you go. Fill your boots."
Yeah.
Obviously don't do that because that would be something different. But,
No,
yeah.
indeed. Indeed. We're back to that airline again.
Yeah.
Yes, it's. But the thing is, as I say, I am one of those people who has to ask for said belt. I don't understand why you would. As I say, I can get it like the ordinary one to fit, and it is tight and it is uncomfortable, and you think, why? If you know, because especially if you're going like sort of, you know, if it's a 4 or 5 hour flight, why would you make yourself uncomfortable for that long period of time? Even if you're only wearing it, you know, I mean, I must admit, I tend to have it on like loose, even when like it does say you can take this, you know, take the seatbelt off. You know,
good. You listen to us. You listen to us.
Well, I think I'd be in an awful lot of trouble.
Well, we tried to, Andy, but as we were saying the other week on the show, if you remember, guys, we were talking about the quality of the Swedish.
Yeah. Yes. It is one of many Nev pet peeves. It has to be said. Indeed, but yeah, I don't understand what the you know is. I don't get the stigma. I just don't get it. Why would you put yourself through feeling uncomfortable? I mean, it's just I don't.
I'm going to suggest it was probably for getting clicks on Instagram.
Oh, steady on there. Yeah.
I'll tell you what, after the amount of food that we ate last week at Sturman's wedding, I felt uncomfortable.
Yeah, you weren't flying on a Ryanair flight, though.
No.
But then you would have asked for the extender, wouldn't you?
I would have done.
Yeah, absolutely. Just to make it comfortable. Anyway, Nev,
you've got the next story, and obviously we've had our share of issues this week in the UK, but... carry on.
Have we?
Yeah, not limited to the UK, because on CNN.com it says the Department of Transport issues largest ever fine to American Airlines for tarmac delays. And the company is facing the largest ever fine for keeping passengers waiting on board airplanes during hours-long delays. The DOT is levying the $4.1 million fine, the largest civil penalty that the department has ever assessed, it says in a statement, for lengthy tarmac delays of 43 flights that impacted more than 5,800 passengers. The flights occurred between 2018 and 2021. In the longest of the delays, passengers set aboard a plane in Texas in August 2020 for 6 hours and 3 minutes. The 105 passenger flight had landed after being diverted from DFW airport due to severe weather, with the Department of Transport alleging that American lacked sufficient resources to appropriately handle several of these flights once they landed. Federal rules set the maximum time that passengers can be held without the opportunity to get off prior to takeoff or after landing at 3 hours for domestic flights and 4 hours for international flights. Current rules also require airlines to provide passengers water and a snack. American told CNN the delays all resulted from exceptional weather events and represent a very small number of the 7.7 million flights during this time period. The company also said that it had invested in technology to better handle flights in severe weather and reduce the congestion at airports. These efforts are already providing significant benefits to our customers and team members, and we continue to look for innovative ways to further improve, the airline said. American would pay $2.05 million of the fine to the government and has been credited for paying the other half in passenger compensation. Makes my 20-minute delay whilst we're waiting for the stand guidance to be switched on at Heathrow pale into insignificance a bit, doesn't it, really?
Yeah.
Goodness, there's some big numbers there. But of course, when weather's happening and there's, delays on stand and all the rest of it, then, you can't just magic space out of thin air, can you?
And 6 hours is still phenomenal, though, to sit and wait.
It is, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I get it. Like, again, Europe and America have very different regulations surrounding this. We'll board an aircraft if we've got, say, for departure, if we've got a delay up to 3 hours, a slot delay, then we'll board. If not, we'll wait, because hopefully, as we all know with the slot, we get them on and tell them we're ready. We might be able to get out a bit sooner. But I've never seen a delay of 6 hours on arrival. I mean, it must have been chaos on that aircraft.
Yeah, and I think the problem is that I suppose on an outbound flight, the crew make the decision. Well, if everybody's on the aircraft and they're ready to go, as you say, there's a chance that the slot can be brought forward and they're off they go. But when you're arriving, let alone if they're connecting flights or the crew's going to go onto another flight or whatever it is, it's pretty awful, isn't it? But yeah, 6 hours I think appears to be an all-time record. I've never heard anything like that sort of time before.
unless you're flying on what's the airline that has the residents? Is it Qatar?
Yes, that would be all right.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
The one that if unless you're in that, in your own suite on board an aircraft with double bed, lounge, and all the rest of it, I think the 6-hour delay you'd probably.
I think I'd rather go around the hold for 6 hours than sit on the ground for 6 hours.
Yeah.
You get less grief from the passengers if you did that, just going round and round in the air, because they know, okay, we'll get on the ground eventually. But if you just sat there and you can see where you're going to get off.
Wouldn't that be a conversation with the chief pilot, though, Andy, if you'd taken 6 hours of holding fuel?
Yes, I think it would be. It would be a chat without tea or biscuits or a job, probably.
No, indeed.
It's definitely on bingo fuel, I think, Andy.
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
Bingo fuel. I've not heard that one before. That's a new one on me.
Explain, Andy, quickly for Matt. Explain.
Bingo fuel?
Well, no, I've got it. I think I know what it means. It's a bit like lottery fuel, I think. It's that sort of thing, isn't it? Pick a number and hope for the best.
Oh, yes.
Is that about right?
Fumes.
Yeah, indeed.
Proper fumes.
Andy, you've obviously... I'd love to hear your thoughts on your story next, because for me, I'm just worried that our air traffic control system here in the UK has gone back to Windows 98. But anyway, carry on.
Well, yes. Well, this one's from the Guardian.com, and it's airlines call for compensation reform after staggering air chaos revelation. Was it a revelation? Airlines have urged reform of compensation rules after the staggering revelation that a single wrongly input flight plan to UK air traffic control disrupted hundreds of thousands of passengers' flights. NATS, which controls UK airspace, said an unusual piece of data had caused the unprecedented system failure on Monday, which led to more than 1,600 flights being axed and many more delayed. Would-be holidaymakers and returning travellers were counting the cost on Wednesday, with many missing trips or yet to fly home and having to arrange accommodation. EasyJet started additional repatriation flights from Spain and Portugal as stranded passengers reported having to sleep on floors amid criticisms of airlines for failing to look after customers. The Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, reiterated calls on airlines to honour their obligations, while Labour said the government should give the regulator more powers to protect passengers. Sunak said it is important that airlines honour their obligations to passengers with regards to accommodation and flights to bring them back home. Airlines are not expected to pay additional delay compensation to passengers for the current meltdown, as the circumstances are deemed outside their control. Well, too right, they are. But industry body IATA estimated airlines could lose £100 million in revenue in the costs of alternative travel, as well as accommodation and food that passengers can reclaim, and urged the CAA to review the system to make NATS contribute. Willie Walsh, the Director General of IATA, said it's very unfair because the air traffic control system, which was the heart of this failure, doesn't pay a single penny. The row escalated as NAT's chief executive revealed that one single piece of data received had sparked the system failure when it didn't recognise a message. Martin Rolfe said that NAT's automatic flight planning had been designed to stop for safety reasons to ensure that no incorrect information could impact the rest of the air traffic system. He ruled out a cyber attack and declined to comment or confirm declined to confirm or deny claims that wrongly submitted information came from a French airline. Walsh said it was staggering an explanation. He told the BBC, if that's true, it demonstrates a considerable weakness. He said that the UK should look at the way passengers' compensation is dealt with to ensure that people who are responsible for the delays and cancellations ultimately bear the costs. However, Labour Shadow Transport Secretary said airlines had long played fast and loose, and ministers should stop dragging their feet and give regulators the power they need to stand up for passengers.
Now I've got
lots of thoughts on this, but I'll let you go first.
Okay, I've got some questions, if I may. So I'll be brutally honest with you. Although I was aware of what was going on, and I know there was messages going backwards and forwards, I have to say I don't really understand essentially what's happened here. So I get that UK air traffic, or UK airspace, I should say, was essentially shut down for... Now, how long was it shut down for? Because they were quite quick in fixing it, from what I understand.
The airspace never closed.
Right, okay.
What happened was this flight plan came in that completely flummoxed the system. And the system's designed, when that happens, just go, don't know, we're not putting this through, stop. So it puts a stop on everything. So all the flight plans come at this system, and that's how they're allocated. Slots if required, any airspace regulations that it's going to fly through, and it can work the whole thing out from start to finish. When this came in, it just went, nope, hang on, no more data here, there's a problem. Every other flight that was in the system got a 10-hour delay just stuck straight on it.
Right, okay.
And that's where the problem started, because it's flow restrictions then, they reduced the flow rate down to 40 aircraft an hour in UK airspace.
Gosh, that is low.
Which, yeah, that's not a lot. And that includes everything. Overflights, arrivals, departures, the lot.
Gosh.
And of course, that immediately caused a huge backlog. The airline I worked for, they had aircraft en route who were getting, like I say, slots of 10, 12 hours, which immediately puts you out of hours and all that sort of stuff. So that's where the delay came. But the big problem here is we've got a system that can fall over very easily, and in my opinion, has very little protection.
Right.
All the apps out there, there's apps you can buy on the app stores that will show you every flight plan, all it still is that are planned in there. It can take and it can interrogate the system and pull all that information out for free and with no problem.
Okay.
And I think that's a big flaw in it. They're saying it's not a cyber attack. All right, it might not be this time, but what about next time?
Indeed. Okay. I mean, that's a fair sort of point in terms of that. But in terms of actually what happened here, so does anybody know how long it was? Because was the issue essentially that they weren't able to undo once they'd sort of solved the issue? Were they then not able to sort of reopen everything up and like essentially reschedule? Is it just because it's such a mammoth now manual task, and that was part of the problem of getting everything sorted?
So initially, when they realised what the fault was, they started to input the flight plans manually.
Right.
And then once they fixed it, it was just a huge backlog.
Yeah.
People don't realise how many flights take off and depart, like every 10 minutes in this country. It's a huge amount.
I think, what was it? Is it somebody remind me? Nev, you might remember this at Heathrow. Is it 90 seconds or something that there's something either landing or taking off at Heathrow throughout?
In the peak time, yeah. But the other thing I would say about this is the media reporting was absolute rubbish.
Well, and that's why I'm asking these questions.
Certain travel advisors who should know better were talking out of their bottoms for the most part, I have to say. However, our good chum Michelle Robson at Turning Left for Less came up with some very sensible stuff and was asked for a couple of interviews because she's worked at ATC for 23 years before she started doing what she was doing.
Oh, wow.
I'm just going to read you a quick excerpt. She says, this morning the flight planning system failed for the UK, which affected both ATC centres in Scotland and Swanwick and the airports. The centre controls aircraft once they have taken off, when they are inbound to the UK, before they are handed over to the airport, and also flights which are overflying the UK, as Andy just said. Controllers need basic information on each flight to populate their display, such as the flight number, aircraft type, destination and route. When the system initially failed, it was not an issue, as it can store 4 hours worth of data, so everything continued as normal. When it became clear that they could not fix the issue within 4 hours, they decided to go manual, and this means that all flight plans have to be entered manually, which is very time consuming. Therefore, they will not be able to handle anywhere near the usual number of aircraft. It seems that they put a 0 rate on, which stops aircraft departing for the UK and from the UK that aren't already airborne. And she was actually at Jersey, and they were told that they had an indefinite delay, which turned out to be about 4 hours in the end. But once they had transferred into manual operations, they will usually try to increase the number of aircraft which are allowed to take off to a level where they can comfortably work, but it's still very limited. Around 3:30 p.m. the systems came back on, but by this time most airlines were having to cancel multiple flights. The flights affected were mainly domestic and short haul, and airlines will now try to recover as much of the ongoing schedule as they can. And of course, we do know that there was, ongoing problems for days afterwards. But good job there, Michelle. Thank you very much indeed for actually taking a sensible pill and telling the media about your experience.
Yeah.
Because you used to do the job. But some of the other travel correspondents, honestly, it was pathetic. awful.
And even though the system was fixed, the reason for all the cancellations was the airlines have to then start thinking about tomorrow.
Yes.
And making sure they've got the aircraft that they can have in the right place.
Mm.
So all the aircraft that they had back in the UK, and they realised, well, we're not going to be able to operate the evening flights and back within the hours for the crew, etc.
Yeah.
So let's just can the entire programme and keep the aircraft that are down route for the night, get them back first thing, and the aircraft that we've got, we can use them for first wave, and then anything else we've got left over, we can do extra flights to bring the people back who couldn't get back today.
Okay.
So because it looks like total chaos when people go, they just cancelled every flight. But so you've got to look at the entire operation, not just, unfortunately, your flight.
Indeed, and I suppose with that in mind, of course, essentially, as you say, the big problem here is that all the schedules are so tight, essentially, that let's take Ryanair as an example. You know, you've got one misplaced 737, and as you say, essentially that has a knock-on effect on potentially 2 or 3 other flights, because that plane isn't where it's supposed to be at the allotted time, as you say. So it's almost like, okay, let's write off today as a terrible experience and then sort of start again tomorrow, if you see what I mean, because at least you stand a good chance of things being in a slightly better place. And then you've only got a handful of aircraft that were in the air at the time and all that.
And you've got to maximise the hours you can use the aircraft for tomorrow as well. Yeah. So I was flying an aircraft the other day. I did Antalya and back, and then it went straight back out to do an overnight Dalaman and back. It actually flew 20 hours out of 24 in a day. That's brilliantly efficient use of an aircraft.
Yeah, indeed.
I'll just end by saying how annoyed I was at the as Nev was saying, some of the coverage on TV. Yeah. One of the things that really grinds my gears, I like to say.
Oh dear! Thank you, Family Guy. Yes.
Was the people who are on holiday? And I know it's affected their travel, either return plans or their going out plans. You know, people who are delayed coming back to the UK from their holiday. And people were moaning, saying, oh, the airlines are rubbish, blah, 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 and having a go at the ground staff. But do you know one thing that just goes around in my head every time I see these things? We all have insurance. Most people, sensible people, take out either annual or single trip cover insurance to cover these things.
Again, forgive my naivety on this one, but would an incident like this have been covered under most people's travel insurance?
Most people do.
Yes.
They have a thing for so many hours of delay, or if it affects it, and you get covered. That's why we all have a travel insurance.
And one last point from me, sorry. Everybody complaining about there's no airline staff here, you know, there's nobody around. If you want to have staff at every single airport, loads of them there ready for when this stuff happens, you cannot expect to pay £60 for a return ticket on an aeroplane.
No, exactly. Indeed.
Very good point.
Hell yeah.
Indeed.
Very true.
Indeed. And this is really why I had all these questions. I'm sorry to sort of like, monopolise it a bit. But Nev, as you were saying, the thing is I'm the first to admit, even after doing this for 8 years now, I still don't really know a great deal about aviation. And so when something like this happens, and you're stuck listening to, the awful reporting, mainstream media as well, and like so disappointed with the coverage that the BBC and ITV, as an example, were doing. And don't get me started on what Sky was saying, especially with one of the people that they were using as a correspondent. It was just utterly awful, and that's the problem. It's just like, I was aware that there was something going on with ATC, but I genuinely had no clue as to what was actually, because there was just so much like headline grabbing sensational rubbish out there that it was very difficult to pick out the bits that somebody who's actually genuinely interested in what was really happening, never mind that, sorry, this sounds terrible, don't really care about those who are stuck in various airports and all that kind of thing. The nerd in me is actually wanting to know what was going on, why was this problem having, whether it's my IT background or whatever. It's just like, yeah, all right, this awful things happen, but everybody's alive, so that's a huge plus. There aren't planes falling out of the sky because of this or anything like that. It's just, so the nerd in me is like, what was actually happening? What was the problem?
I think we should ask Richard Westcott if he'd like to rejoin the BBC as their
I'd
travel
love that.
correspondent, don't you?
Yeah, 100%.
At the end of the day, they just needed to do their Windows update.
Right.
I think travel correspondent's a job for me when I retire.
Oh, can you imagine?
Oh.
At least I'd tell it how it is.
Oh, yeah, I think that might be that might be the area of concern. That's
I'd pay money for that tweet.
absolutely lovely.
Anyway.
Yeah, indeed. Well, shall we move on before we get sued? Yeah.
So, from aerotime.aero, this next story, and, well, another Boeing 787 Dreamliner is going to be dismantled. The third 787 to be dismantled following substantial damage at Bogota. The engineers and mechanics started dismantling a LATAM Airlines 787-8, becoming the third ever commercially active aircraft of the type to be scrapped. Good news for me and my wall. I have a space over there.
No, here we go.
LATAM Airlines, the wide-body jet, registered Charlie Charlie Bravo Bravo Foxtrot, belonging to the carrier's Chilean subsidiary. Pictures that was shown on social media, this is from an accident that happened a while back, showed the aircraft without its tail and wings, as well as multiple workers and equipment near the 787. The decision to dismantle the just over 9-year-old aircraft, this was, followed the incident which happened early in May 2023, this year, when it was involved in an incident at Bogota El Dorado Luis Carlos Galan Salamento International Airport in Colombia. The aircraft was being repositioned by a tug when a tow bar snapped, resulting in the tug becoming stuck underneath the fuselage of the aircraft. Post-incident videos show substantial damage to the bottom of the fuselage, including deep cuts in some of the 787's composite fuselage. According to chaviation.com, the database, Charlie Bravo Bravo Foxtrot had a total number of 10,300 flight hours on the clock and 1,575 flight cycles. Operating an average stage length of around 6 hours and 32 minutes of its flights. Previously, 2 former Norwegian Boeing 787s were scrapped at Glasgow Prestwick Airport in Scotland back in February this year. The pair registered Victor Papa Charlie Victor Lima and Victor Papa Charlie Victor Mike had been stored at PIK since May and September 2019 respectively. While neither was involved in an incident, these aircraft presumably no longer wanted by an operator, and they weren't obviously purchased, and the second-hand market was obviously not their place to go. So after 4 years in storage, those 2 aircraft were dismantled. The 2 Boeing 787s were delivered to Norwegian back in 2013. However, Boeing also dismantled one 787 test bed, namely a 787-8 with manufacturer serial number 40694 back in 2018. Now, Matt's got the video on the screen for those of you watching on YouTube, where the aircraft is being pulled along by a ground tug. He takes a sharp turn, and yes, didn't end too nicely. I mean, the pictures that I think, Matt, you had the pictures, didn't you, on the screen earlier? The pictures of the aircraft. I mean, the damage was quite extensive underneath the aircraft, but I'm surprised it wasn't repaired. I suppose they have to look at the cost. Oh, here, I knew you'd have something to say, Andy.
Plastic Boeing thing.
What about the A350?
Yeah, that's a beautiful Airbus product.
I wonder, I tell you what would be interesting, wouldn't it, to know the challenges that these new composite aircraft present when there is damage like this, and to ensure the integrity. Right?
I don't think you can't rivet on a patch like you can an aluminium frame.
No, or a bit of speed tape, off you go.
That's quite a bit of damage to that, isn't it?
Yeah, once that's been compromised, it does make it very, very difficult to repair because of the way in which the composite cloth is actually laid up when it's actually originally molded. So it will be done in such a way where the different layers of the cloth will be laid over each other in different orientations in order to make sure that
get the strength
everything's
there,
really nice and strong.
Yeah.
And obviously, if you punch a hole through it, you can't then kind of recreate that, because your strength comes from the structure as a whole, if you like, rather than with metal. You can kind of just chop out a bit, put another bit in, rivet it back together, and you've got something that still is structurally the same, and that just doesn't work with composite. So it does make me wonder whether or not this is going to be a bit of a problem moving forward with these types of jets, where they could become a bit of a risk to own almost for some operators.
I would love to know where that cut-off point is with aircraft. You know, when you get an airliner like this, 787, when you have damage, where they say, no, that's it, this is beyond economic repair.
Aaron P is saying that the cost of repair versus selling off the good parts. I mean, they get good money for the engines and stuff, don't they? So it's not a. Yeah, Mazouz is suggesting it'll buff out. By the way.
Yeah, Mazouz.
The engines are leased by different companies as well. They're not actually owned by the airline. It's the subject of a separate contract.
Of course it is.
Usually anyway. Yeah.
Now, Matt, you've got the next story. I saw this popped up on the news feed earlier this week, and I have to say I saw the video first. That was someone posted on Twitter.
Right.
But this just proves a massive point to me, and me and you were talking about this earlier on in the week, Matt, when you stopped for dinner, about wearing seatbelts.
Yeah, indeed. It's CBSnews.com is the source on this one, and the headline is 11 hospitalised after Delta flight hits severe turbulence en route to Atlanta. A Delta flight hit severe turbulence as it was approaching Atlanta's Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport on Tuesday, sending 11 people to the hospital after landing. The Airbus A350, which took off from Milan in Italy, landed safely shortly before 7 p.m. after hitting turbulence around 40 miles northeast of the airport, the Federal Aviation Administration has said. The plane was carrying 151 passengers and 14 crew members, according to the airline. Both customers and crew members of Delta Flight 175 were among those who were injured. It's not immediately clear how many of each were hurt or how severe any of their injuries were. It was the latest in a series of incidences this year in which people have been hurt when their flights hit severe turbulence. It's now sort of moving on, really, sort of, yes, airline flights are getting bumpier, and a suggestion possibly as to how come, essentially. This clear air turbulence, as it's called, is caused by patches of air swirling chaotically within the world's jet streams, strong air currents that circle the globe from west to east, and that we see on weather maps as wide wavy lines that bend around low and high pressure centres. Airlines like to fly within these bands of fast moving air to boost speeds and reduce travel times if the bands are near enough to the flight's desired direction. The swirls invisible to the eye batter a plane wing, and then the battering is strong enough as it jerks the plane up or down. The passengers freeze and flight attendants stumble. Over the past 4 decades, clear air turbulence has increased by up to 55% in various regions around the world. Models predict another 100 to 200% increase over the next 30 to 60 years. Each time the thumping arrives, it strikes no warning. Pilots can spot turbulence ahead of them relatively easily when it's inside a storm or among clouds. Onboard radar can track the movements of raindrops in the distance to reveal the turbulent motion of air. Pilots can then forewarn passengers and crew, encouraging them to take their seat and buckle up before a jolt hits. Turbulence in clear air, however, is invisible to radar. Pilots typically don't know it's there until it hits the plane. Cloudy turbulence is created by a heating effect induced by the sun. When dawn breaks, the sun starts warming the ground, which in turn heats the air near the surface. The warmer the air is, the warmer air is, less dense than I'm so sorry. This is really Andy. I'm going to refer to you because this article has been so badly written. It's almost difficult to read. Well, so just explain to me what this sort of clear air turbulence is. Yeah,
CAT. Let's just call it CAT. That's easier.
Fair enough. I like a cat. Yes.
So, clear air turbulence, CAT, occurs normally when there's a rapid change in wind speed, direction. It's talking about jet streams there. Normally, as you enter or cross a jet stream, depending on which side you're on of it and which way it's twirling and which hemisphere you're in, that all makes a difference. The air, it's much like watching a river enter the sea.
Right.
The river's fast moving, the sea's slow moving.
Yep.
You see the waves caused, yeah?
Yep.
And that's the same effect in the sky. And if you watch a boat ride over that, the boat will bounce all over the place.
Yeah.
But it's not unsafe. A lot of turbulence over Europe at the moment has been due to air change in direction. And the slower the air is, the more turbulent it generally is as well. With fast-moving air, it's normally pretty laminar at high altitude, so it's pretty smooth to fly through. In this particular case, though, you'll note it's 40 miles after takeoff from Milan. And Milan's surrounded by the Alps. And you quite often get mountain waves as well. So that's another form of air. Imagine the air's flowing along quite happily and nicely. It finds a hill. It doesn't run into it. It goes up and over it. And it creates a wave effect, which then dips and waves and dips and waves, and you get what's called a mountain wave. So as you go through that air, it can cause quite a bit of turbulence of lifting and pushing the aircraft up and down. So that's probably what caused this, because it can cause quite rapid changes in altitude pretty fast. But at the end of the day, clear air turbulence hasn't caused a major accident in many years. The biggest one I can think of is the BOAC 707 that hit a mountain wave around Mount Fuji climbing out of Tokyo, which caused the whole aircraft to break up, but that was due to the handling of it as well. It's not the end of the world, but like you said before, and Carlos was saying, just keep your seatbelts fastened. The cabin crew, obviously, it's a bit more difficult for them, and you really can't see clear air turbulence coming, because on the weather radar, where you've got that only moisture returns really, and shows you where there's real heavy moisture and in clouds, and that's where you're going to get turbulence. But clear air turbulence, we get reports from aircraft ahead saying, we're experiencing it, what's it like, 1,000 above, 1,000 below, and stuff like that. And everybody talks to each other. And the forecasts are pretty darn accurate these days as well. We get charts that show you where all the predicted areas are. Sometimes you fly through those areas smooth as silk. Other times you're flying through areas where there's nothing forecast, and next thing you know, all hell breaks loose for a few minutes. But it's not the end of the world. And it feels like the aircraft's moving a lot, but when we sit and look at the flight instruments, nothing's really happening. Speed's going up and down a little bit. Nose may change its attitude by a degree and a half. Altitude might go up 10, 20 feet, down a bit. But it's nothing really at the end of the day. And the larger the aircraft and the heavier it is, the better it rides it as well. I've been in some empty A319s positioning them around, hitting turbulence. It's like a crisp packet in the wind. You get flapped here, there, and everywhere, but it's just due to the weight.
Indeed. I mean, turbulence is something that I'm not...
Did that make sense, though, Matt?
Yeah, no, it did, very much so. Far better than what I was struggling to read, to be honest with you, so I appreciate that. That's a good analogy, actually, the river running into the sea. I mean, I've done my fair share of Broad's cruiser holidays near the near the mouth of, like in Yarmouth there, basically, where it does join. And the current, if you like, where you go from one to the other is quite intense, and that's quite a good sort of way of, so that explains
it's exactly the same, you just can't see it.
Yeah, indeed. So it's well, there you go. The advice on that one is always make sure you've got your seatbelt worn loosely.
Always,
and if like me,
do.
you're a larger gentleman, treat yourself to an extender. Anyway, so
That's a big table, isn't it? That's Alan Partridge.
Yeah, quite, indeed.
Nev,
indeed.
I'm guessing you always keep yourself strapped in.
Yeah, always. I mean, I remember I was flying from Copenhagen to Norrköping in Sweden on an SAS commuter Fokker 50 aircraft. So that doesn't fly very high, probably at flight level 200, I suppose, something like that, 20,000 feet. And it's only a 45-minute flight, but they could not find a flight level that was smooth at all on this occasion. And the captain comes over the PA, he says, we're just going to have to go with what we've got, I'm afraid. We've tried everything to try and make it smooth. But
it does happen.
Yeah.
I've been in descent coming into Luton. It was overhead Silverstone, actually, because I was looking at Silverstone at the time. Hit a massive patch of turbulence. The aircraft just wouldn't go down. I'd asked for clearance to descend out of it, and I couldn't get the damn thing to go down. It was just wallowing in this layer. I had to get the speed brake out and disconnect the autopilot and actually push it down myself to get it to go down and get out of it.
Indeed.
Blimey.
Well, really appreciate the explanation there. Now, we are rapidly running out of time, unfortunately,
Andy,
so we're going
you've got
to move
the
on
last
to
story.
Our last story, if that's okay, Nev.
Yeah, well, it'll have to be. I was looking forward to the a food story, but
we'll save it for next week, I promise.
Yes.
We'll save it for next week, because this one, I think we do need to cover.
Definitely.
Yeah, okay, so this one's from themirror.co.uk, and this is collapsed Monarch Airlines slams brakes on relaunch as it runs out of funding.
What?
Monarch Airlines once carried as many as 6.3 million passengers to 40 destinations every year, including flights from Gatwick, Manchester and Birmingham airports. But the firm collapsed in October 2017, bringing a curtain down on one of the country's oldest airlines, which launched in 1967. Earlier this month, a new website appeared for Monarch, along with a social media page declaring its return. Yesterday, the company announced that the process would either be stopped completely or slowed down significantly. It is with immense regret that we announce today that we have been forced to put the brakes on our process to relaunch Monarch. A statement on its website reads, "This is not a decision that we have taken lightly. However, since taking over the business 2 weeks ago, we have drawn close to exhausted the startup funding provided to us far more rapidly than we anticipated. We've been seeking alternative routes such as partial divestment of share capital and will continue to do so. However, at the current stage, there is no practical option to move forward in the immediate future." The airline's existence came to an end back in 2017 quite dramatically, with more than 110,000 passengers stranded abroad. What followed was the biggest peacetime repatriation programme at the time, costing £60 million, although this was overtaken in terms of scale by the Thomas Cook collapse in 2019. 6 years on, the airline looks to be working on plans to relaunch flights and holiday packages from the UK. A new social media account for the airline tweeted earlier this month, "We're working hard to build a brand new Monarch just for you." Another tweet said, "Monarch Airlines and Limited and Monarch Holidays Limited were yesterday passed into new ownership following the exit of the company's founder and previous majority shareholder. More information will be forthcoming." Yeah.
So now I have questions. So
Yes.
bearing in mind the airline collapsed back in 2017 quite dramatically,
So
as
it's not a
says.
relaunch. It's
So
a new
not-
airline.
Well, this is the thing. It's just like, so did essentially somebody held on to the brand then? Is that what I'm missing here?
Yeah, I think the name and the brand have been sold off them by the administrators, and somebody bought it, and now they've just
Right.
decided to use it. There was a couple of companies set up a few weeks back with these names. There's quite a bit of damning stuff out there about the people who've set it up. Obviously not going to name them because it's we don't know any of it.
Please don't.
True or anything. But when I saw this earlier this week, I thought, well, that's never going to work. You can't relaunch an airline that's had all of its routes and everything taken away from it. It's got no slots anywhere. I don't know where it would buy slots to fly.
True.
Getting hold of Airbus aircraft at the minute is an absolute nightmare. There just aren't any. Yeah, I think it was a bit of a pipe dream, potentially of some Walter Mitty types, but I don't know.
I think also a lot of us do have that. That a lot of us, even myself, you think of Monarch quite fondly, of because it was an iconic airline. There's no two ways about it. And maybe that's what they were sort of riding on that's why you're sort of investing essentially in buying the brand and putting it back out there, is because you're hoping to capitalise on the fact that it's an airline that a lot of people remember and a lot of people had good experiences with in the past.
Well, it's like, I think Mike has said it as well. Pan Am, that keeps reappearing all over the place. At one point, it was a train service in the States.
Yeah.
People just buying the name, selling it on, moving it around. But Monarch's gone. People just need to let it rest.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, why not restart Dan Air? Bring Dan Air back.
Yeah, let's do that. Yeah.
Bring the BAC 111s back. Yeah.
That's it. It's just a new airline using an old name that hasn't worked out. It's just like this global airline or whatever they could have bought those A380s. I will, if that ever flies and does at least one profitable flight, I will eat a hat.
Oh, excellent. One made of cake, I suspect.
Just time-stamping that now.
Yeah, please, absolutely.
Please do that, because it will not happen.
Please make a note of that, will you?
Episode 470.
Indeed.
Right.
UK Airfield, sorry, very quickly, Richard is saying, are Monarch Engineering still about? They were one of the leftover parts of Monarch Airlines after the collapse in 2017.
Nope, they finally went bust in early 2019.
And Richard E-Flag UK Airfields also says Dan Air are about in Romania.
Oh, dear. Right.
Oh, great.
There we go. So you heard it here first.
Yeah, indeed.
Moving swiftly on, because we have still got tons to pack in the show, including what's coming up next, because Armando's been busy this week, very busy indeed, and he's been having an interview with the guys over at Timber Tiger Aircraft. Now, if you get a chance while you're listening to this, just Google Timber Tiger Aircraft. The aircraft are amazing. You've got to go and see them. So, Matt, if you're ready, let's hear from Armando.
Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm good. Where are you?
I'm at the shop.
Which is?
Timber Tiger Aircraft.
Where in the country?
Here in Colorado.
I was watching a YouTube video, I guess one of your partners, who was in Marion, North Carolina.
Oh, okay.
Is that where the airplane was for a little while?
Yeah, so that would have been Brooks. He was doing some of the some test flying. He started here in Boulder with the test flying of the STL, and then he moved to North Carolina, and one thing led to another, and he got to take the airplane with him.
That's awesome.
Year. So
I actually got super excited because I'm in Charlotte, and I was like, oh man, Marion, that's like right around the corner.
Oh, okay.
Oh.
Yeah. The airplane right now is in Morehead City, North Carolina, with its new owner. So.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, maybe I'll go link up with them and get some in-person pictures or something like that.
Yeah, I doubt he'd have a problem with that.
Yeah. Well, it's Tuesday, and you said you were. By the way, we're recording already, and the only two rules are try not to cuss because it's hard to edit, and and then don't say anything that you wouldn't say to the FAA in person. Those are the only two rules.
I'm good. I'm good at both of those.
Okay, good. Well, you just got back from Oshkosh, huh?
Yeah. It was a pretty crazy year. We have the STL, of course, and then we unveiled the Jenny, which we got the rights to over the summer, and then we unveiled the Speedster as well, which is in development.
So have you, especially at Oshkosh, have you just given the same 2-minute spiel about 850 times?
Yeah, that pretty well sums up Oshkosh. Yeah. It's but there comes it's like a little hump in the graph, right? Because at the beginning of the week you're not practiced, and then you're really practiced by the middle of the week, and then by the end of the week you're so over it that you start to stumble.
I know. I've been up there a couple of times with different with Lance Air and some of the sport class Reno Air Race guys. And that really does sum it up. It's just like, oh man, I'm excited to be here. And then after a while, you just actually forget in the middle of the conversation if you've said something or not previously. So what do you tell me a little bit about before we get into the airplanes, about the company? Like, what is it? How did you get into it? What are you trying to do?
Okay. So the company was founded in 2017. Which of course is about 2 years after we started the development on the STL. Right now we've got 3 of us working here. It's a full-time gig. It's not just a part-time thing. what led to it was just as a kid, I wanted to start designing airplanes. And as a kid, of course, I designed a lot of airplanes that never would have worked. And I kept telling myself I was going to end up in the home built industry and designing airplanes, and moved into the automotive world instead. And in the automotive world, I did restoration, a lot of muscle cars, a lot of street rods, competitively. And that's where we learned really quality. You know, that's especially when you're doing paint and body work on a car, that's the stuff people see. That's the stuff that people nitpick, the smallest details. So after 13 years of running that business, I decided to wind it down a little bit to where I could start focusing on the airplane stuff. I had gained what I needed as far as business experience and managing a whole bunch of people, and especially the quality. That was the big thing. So we brought all that stuff here to Timber Tiger Aircraft, and now, of course, we have 3 airplanes that we're developing. So
had you built any airplanes before you went into the automotive side?
So I started a Pete and Paul air camper, and I got the fuselage done. Yeah, I loved it, and I got the fuselage done on that. That's as far as I got. And then one of my friends that I was working with at the airport had passed away in a crash. Pilot Air. It wasn't anything to do with the airplane, and that really just kind of dampened aviation for me, and that's really why I moved into the automotive industry. So, but I did have a soft spot for the air campers at the time, and then of course getting back into it after I had let some time pass. The golden age stuff still appealed and still does. So that's why we do the golden age stuff.
Yeah, and we'll get into that. I mean, the airplane, all 3 of them are absolutely beautiful. But funny enough, the STL I had actually seen before, and I don't know if it was through one of your marketing efforts or something like that, but I actually had talked to my wife maybe a year ago about, this may be the kit that we build, because I'm very much a golden era of aviation. Also, we're vintage. I have a Super Cruiser, and that's after owning a Lancer. I didn't build it. I bought a Lancer, so I got into amateur built stuff. This is like the same story as everybody else in Oshkosh, but and then after a while, my wife actually said, well, the airplane's too fast, it's too bumpy, we can never relax in it. So we went the whole other way and got this Super Cruiser where we just go around at 85 knots. But so let me ask you this: for builders, what have you found is your typical customer? Is it a first-time builder, or is it the guy that's built 4 RVs already?
There really is no typical. We've gotten, one of our builders hasn't built anything in his life. As far as I'm concerned, it's my job, providing tech support and stuff like that to make sure somebody's equipped with the knowledge and skills to move forward with the project, regardless of their skill level. That's really what we strive for. Now, that said, we do have a bunch of builders that are experienced builders. Believe it or not, 2 of them are over 90 years old. And have built several airplanes. Yeah. And most of them, I would say, out of the experienced age group are newly retired. We've got one that's an A&P, another restoration guy. So really just everything. There's really no pattern, to be honest with you.
and as far as the skills needed to build, so did you learn almost everything that you needed to know about, I guess, the process of building an airplane from the automotive industry? Is there what special skills? Let's say I wanted to go. I've never built anything, and I wanted to tackle this project on. And I know that Jenny is a little bit different than the STL, in that, you know, the STL has more metal work than fabric, and the Jenny's all fabric. But like, what skills would I need, and where could I pick them up to start on a crazy project like this?
So anybody with technical skills can do it. And what I mean by that is, if you struggle with IKEA furniture, you probably don't you probably don't want to be building an airplane. But if you're good at critical thinking, for instance, the instructions tell you to do this, but maybe there's something in the instructions that isn't quite clicking for you. If you can look at a tool and think, okay, how do I get from A to B? You'll be fine. And I really think that it's about moving slowly. And the biggest thing for me, and one of the things I'm most frustrated about, is people's belief in themselves. We get too many people at Oshkosh that say, I can't do this. And they're saying that about all kits. And it's because they don't understand. They've never been taught that if they mess something up or make a mistake, it can be fixed. And that's really all they need to know. I learned my technical skills through the automotive world. Anybody who's done a house project, I'm talking a bigger house project, something more involved where they have to do research. Somebody who's restored a car or has even just swapped out an engine on a car or anything like that, they can build an airplane. They just need to go slow, make sure they're paying attention to what they're doing.
Out of all the areas, I guess out of all the skills required, and of course, I can only imagine there's a lot of learning that happens along the way. But is there one area that you think, I mean, I think most people would get a mentor or somebody to help them, but hey, you really need to know what you're doing. Maybe go take a class or some, maybe avionics or electronics or something like that on the airplane?
Yeah. So I think for any airplane, it's really important that people not just know how to build a fuel system, but understand how it works. That would be my biggest thing. Plumbing, fuel systems, electrical, like you said, is a huge one. When you're in the air and something goes wrong on an airplane you built, you should instantly or close to instantly have, you don't need to know what it is, but you should have an idea of what it could possibly be.
Mm-hmm. And then you said take it slow. So what is your target? And each of the airplanes may be a little bit different, but what is your target for build time? And then you guys offer actually a quick build kit too, right?
Yeah, we do on the STL, and then a bunch on the Jenny. So on the STL, we average about a 1,500-hour build time. Now with the quick build fuselage, that brings the build time down to about 1,300. Of course, you're going to have some people that finish one in 800 hours. And then you're going to have some people that take, a lifetime just because they move that slow. And there's no problem in that as long as they enjoy the process. For the Jenny, we estimate a 500-hour build time, significantly different. And keep in mind with the Jenny, there's about 100 that have been flown, give or take. And so there's a good database to pull from as far as build times go. There was one guy who was building them in 400 hours from a box of steel. No kit. This was back in the day. Granted, he was building a lot of them, but it's doable.
Yeah. And now one of your missions is to make this whole project affordable, right? So
yeah. So go ahead.
No, I want to talk about that because I mean,
okay.
RVs easily, up to 150, 200,000. Yeah. Once you start putting a G3X in there, once you start putting all the bells and whistles in it. But one of the things that you're trying to do is make it achievable, right? And affordable. Yeah,
of course. So I'm, especially coming from the automotive restoration world, I'm a working guy, no different than anybody else, so I try to keep things realistic, but that's the thing people don't understand about some of these kits is they get you in the door with cheap prices and then things skyrocket, just absolutely balloon. With things that are like a Ryan replica, especially where people, and I want to point out that the Ryan can be whatever you want it to be. It doesn't have to be a replica. You can make it yours. And we do have some customers that are doing things real custom to make it theirs. But if you want a replica and you want it to stay within this certain set of rules to make it look like an original, then you pay the kit price. And for it to balloon is a little more difficult because you're not splurging on all that crazy instrumentation or this and that. So But yeah, so the Ryan, all in, you're looking about high 80s if you do the work yourself. Yeah, it's really competitive. And the reason I bring up the accessorizing thing is because our kit prices reflect what's included. So yeah, our kit prices are going to be you're going to be into it for, I think our base kit right now is like 39,000. So and then there's the add-ons, of course. But the Jenny especially, that's really where the savings are. You could finish a Jenny for anywhere between 25 and 45,000, depending on how you go about it. Are you going like a deluxe kit, or do you have hardware stashed up, raw materials stashed up? A lot of people do, a surprising number of people actually. So the Jenny is really the less expensive of the two for sure.
So, and how did you pick this two aircraft? So first of all, I mean, the Ryan's such a classic aircraft, and there's not that many. It's not really that popular, other than maybe old magazines and books where people, or a poster, right, where somebody has it on their wall. How did you pick the Ryan, the Jenny, and the Speedster as your projects as a company?
Yeah, so we'll go in order of how we developed them, and of course that was with the Ryan first. So the Ryan was one of the airplanes I fell in love with about the age of 14, when I was starting to find out that you could home build airplanes. And back then, when I was 14, I'm 38 now. Back then, the Ryan was popular as far as being in magazines. It was, article after article. And I saw it in Aerocrafter. And really, and it's kind of disappointing to me that less people now know what the Ryan is. Like, it's, I don't want to call it the interest level, but it's kind of started to slide back down into, the territory of the unknown. And it's been overshadowed by its military cousin, the PT-22, which is a vastly different airplane. And the two shouldn't even really be compared, to be honest with you. They handle so differently. So that's really why I picked the Ryan, was just because of my personal history with loving it as a kid. And it's been kind of fun to watch that interest come back. People now, they're like, oh, I didn't know this existed. It's the most beautiful airplane I've ever seen. Well, I'd love to take credit for that, but Ryan did that back in 1934. So that was the Ryan. And then, of course, the Jenny. Well, actually, let's start with the Speedster. The Speedster, we took notes about what people wanted to see from us. This is notes over several Oshkoshes. And is that a word, Oshkoshes? That's a word, right?
Absolutely. Especially when you're talking about market research over multiple years. Sure.
Yeah, Oshkoshes. So, maybe somebody was about to pull the plug on an STL, and of course, spouses have a say in everything, and a lot of spouses like to sit side by side. That's kind of what drove the Speedster. And it was Glenn Gordon, our CAD consultant, who recommended a side by side Ryan, and we started drawing it up, and it just was not okay. It didn't look right at all. So we started fresh, and that's how we got the Speedster. And of course, it's got folding adaptable wings. It's got the side by side seating. It's got rollover protection in the headrests. It's got a round engine. It's basically got everything that everyone was asking for. A huge baggage compartment. So that's the Speedster. And then the Jenny is kind of an interesting story. The green and cream one that we had at Oshkosh, I first saw that airplane when I was 14, and that was my introduction into home building. I didn't know you could build an airplane, and I saw this thing at the first fly-in I went to, and about 20 years fly by, and the STL is in a hangar at Boulder, and I'm looking at the set of wings, and I'm thinking, that looks awful familiar. And sure enough, it was the set of wings to that Jenny, which had been put in storage for a little while. And I got to talking to the owner, and we picked up the rights to that in June of this year. So it's been a ride.
First of all, the Jenny, that's another just like quintessential classic aircraft. that I think as kids, or at least us, nerds, aviation nerds, all know the name, the Jenny. Your specific kit. Well, you know what? Let me. I'll get into the handling and the flying characteristics, but I did want to talk about you as a business. How did you tackle it? What's the process for you guys as a business? Do you manufacture your parts in-house? Where do you get them from? And then how does that differ from what you provide to the customer? And then like the logistics, how does this all go basically from the birth of the airplane all the way to the first flight?
Yeah. So you're talking all the airplanes in general. What's that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So,
or unless you want to pick one, I'm partial. Yeah. I'm partial to the STL because it really is probably one of the most beautiful airplanes out there, right? So we can talk about the STL.
Really, it was a matter of just doing our best on the prototype, and of course, there's a reason there's a prototype, and it's because you're not going to be happy with everything. And so, really, what we learned on the STL and the changes that we had to make going into production were for production. For instance, our aileron hinges were pretty complex to build. We built them how Ryan did. And if you look at the Ryan drawing, they're actually so simple that you'll think, what do you mean they're complex to build? Well, we could either make a weldment or we could do it the way, other companies do it now and stick some aluminum up on the CNC and have it CNC'd out. So that's what we do now. The bulkhead style on the STL has changed. On the original, it was all doubled up bulkheads, 25 thousandths, so pretty thin aluminum, and it was not pre-drilled at all. And so we built 7 fuselages here at the shop, some quick builds, and in the process of building those quick builds, we would take little measurements here and there and put them into CAD. And now what we have is single bulkheads. They're 40 thousandths now and much, much stiffer. But now they're all match drilled to the fuselage, and so are the longerons. So we can actually build a fuselage now on a table with no fixture at all required, and it's straighter than anything that we built in the past with a fixture. It's all controlled by CNC, so it's perfect.
Yeah, and that's huge because the previous builds or the early builds, you needed some kind of structure.
Yeah.
To attach the skin on, right? And the skin being a structural part of the airplane.
Correct. And lucky for us, we actually didn't sell any non-quick build kits before we had the technology. So nobody's actually had to do that, which, we get lucky every now and then,
Yeah. Hey, right. That's good. So let's talk about you talked about the handling characteristics of flying. So I assume that you've flown all of them, right?
I actually personally have not flown the STL, and it's because I hire the right people to do it.
Smart.
I'm a business owner. Anytime that I've been with the airplane, it's been 13-hour days getting it ready for a show or doing a condition inspection, stuff like that. Now, I understand how that might rub people the wrong way, but you got to remember, I'm a business owner. That's my goal, is to make sure our customers are happy and hire the right people to do the right job. And that's why Brooks ended up as our test pilot. He's a really, really good pilot. And then as far as the Jenny, I've actually not had a chance to fly in one of those because, again, we just picked up the rights over the summer. And even though 100 of them have been flown worldwide, give or take, I actually only know of one in our area, and that's the one that was in storage. So, but really, to answer the question, as far as flight qualities and stuff like that, the best people to talk to are Jeff, Brooks, Glenn. I've got a secret pilot that I'm not allowed to talk about just yet, but you'll see something about that here in a few months. All I can say is make sure all your magazine subscriptions are up to date, because this one's going to be a doozy.
Hold on, so, I gotta write this down. So I will say there is actually something beautiful about that, because as the owner of the business, I think there's one thing that's special, and that's that you're passionate about aviation, and you're talking about a story that goes all the way back to when you were 14 years old, as opposed to you being an investor and a businessman. I think a lot of times in aviation, you get that people that see a business opportunity, and then there's the yous of the world that are truly passionate about this. So it's my experience, right? And I'm not putting words in your mouth, but that passion would prevent you from putting out a substandard product, right? Regardless whether you've flown the airplane or not, it's in your soul and your heart is in each one of these airplanes. So I think that, people can criticize it, but I think that is worth a lot, that you're passionate about it.
Yeah. And it's worth noting too, that things have been moving so fast. It's not like I don't want to fly my own airplanes, right? I do. But things have been moving so fast in the last several years between starting the business, all the media attention, and we've got a two-year-old daughter now. We moved across the state. It's been absolutely nuts. But on the same note, as what you were talking about, we see a lot of people who love airplanes and they want to build one and start a business, but they don't know anything about business. And so that's the flip side. If I'm passionate about, pilotage and building an airplane for myself and then just trying to make some money off of it, that's not how business works. I mean, business is late nights. It's being the last person to take a paycheck home. It's having to make sure that the money coming and going is balancing out. It's making sure that tech support is handled on an evening or on a weekend, or whenever the customer needs you. It's such a complex issue. It's something non-business owners don't understand. It's a huge project. It really is.
Yeah, I do try to balance that. So a 2-year-old, let's see, the build time on a 2-year-old, that's probably 1,500 hours of sleep that you're probably losing a year. I tell my buddies, I think the first year, like, you lose 800 hours of sleep of a kid's life, and then the second year, I think it goes down to like 600 hours that you lose out.
Yeah,
the whole time you're like,
doesn't help anything.
That's literally, I could have built an airplane in that. The time that you were awake in your garage.
Yeah.
What? So feedback wise, then, what have you gotten back? So I think that Jenny's pretty proven. Yours is what scale is it compared to the original?
So the original early bird Jenny was a 67% scale. Mm-hmm. And of course we have essentially the same structure, but with a 12% larger fuselage. We added some reinforcements to the spars. Landing gear we haven't changed, so we've done a few things to it, but the fuselage, for the sake of making it fit today's people, is 75% scale.
Yeah. That's funny that you mentioned the landing gear, because it's like, what is it, like a 21-inch bicycle tire?
Yeah. Well, it's I think John has on his some YZ80 wheels.
Yeah, that's so funny.
Yeah.
I love that you have a concept that's 100 years old. Why mess with it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So, and then the STL is a 95% scale, which you guys did on purpose, right? You didn't want to do a full scale.
Correct. So I wanted full scale, and actually we entertained the idea after we had built the prototype. But going back through the numbers, it's not possible to do at 100% scale what we wanted to do as far as engine horsepower and stuff like that. And so on just 100 horsepower Rotax, because we are 250 pounds lighter than an original, we're actually matching the performance of an STA. And then if we use, for instance, a big bore Rotax with 120 horsepower, we're going to at least match the performance of an STA special. So it really comes down to economics, but we also got lucky in that rescaling down to 95% cleared up some room in key areas on the airplane, and it's actually bigger on the inside, believe it or not. It's more comfortable than an original ST. I can't go too much into it right now, but it does, again, like I said, outperform an original ST. Again, make sure your magazine subscriptions are up to date.
Are you ready? Are you ready as a company for when that gets published and people start lining up at the door?
Oh yeah. So they always talk about the 6-week window after Oshkosh before orders come in. This is something that we've heard from the media. It's something we've heard from other kit companies. And right now we're in that 6-week window. So to see what's going to happen between Oshkosh, and of course we've gotten more media attention right now than we've ever gotten. So to see what happens between Oshkosh and this supposed article that might be coming out, it'll be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah.
But we're ready for it.
So let's talk about that. So let's say somebody comes to you right now. We saw it at Oshkosh. It's a beautiful airplane. I'm ready to buy it. We already talked about costs. What about the logistics of wait times? I think people are patient, right? I think people will wait for the right kits. But what are the logistics of getting it from, I assume, Colorado to my garage in North Carolina, and then as a buyer, what would I need to start prepping? How much space do I need? Specialty tools, anything like that? Like what's the no kidding? Leaves Montrose or leaves Colorado. Is it Montrose?
Yeah.
So
Montrose, Colorado.
Leaves Montrose and arrives in Charlotte, North Carolina. What is that process, and what do I need to prep as a buyer?
So it's worth noting that a lot of our customers actually pick up their project in person. That said, we have shipped them. We're talking to we will be talking to a new shipping company who we talked to at Oshkosh, and they specialize in kits, RVs, kit boxes, that kind of stuff. And that's why I want to talk to them. But in the past, what we've done is we've made a giant crate, and it goes out and it contains everything that you need. It's about 16 feet long for an STL. It's 16 feet long, 4 feet tall, and 3 feet wide. And so if you wanted it shipped, that's traditionally how we would have done it. Of course, going with this new company, we actually don't even need to crate the fuselage anymore. The smaller stuff, of course, still gets crated because it needs to stay all together on their trailer. But as far as getting the order, and once the order is placed, we start production on the kit. It usually takes anywhere between 4 and 8 months to be ready for shipping. And it depends heavily on our work schedule. We do some builder assist as well, so it's not all about building the kits. So about 4 to 8 months. A lot of customers have us ship out a tail surface kit early because it takes so little time to manufacture. And then the idea is that they could get building on a tail surface while they wait for the rest of their kit. So at first I felt, I don't want to say guilty, but I want to see things going out the door as quickly as possible, right? Just to keep our customers happy. But now I'm hearing about other companies it takes that long to get an engine mount. So I think we're doing pretty good.
Yeah.
But I guess that's the benefit of being a smaller company.
And so logistics wise, it could be as simple as I fly to Colorado and I rent the biggest U-Haul or Ryder truck that I can on my license and then truck it back across the country, huh?
Yeah, so we found out that a kit, if it's not a quick build fuselage, will actually fit on a flatbed trailer and in the back of an 8-foot pickup bed.
Okay.
Yeah, believe it or not, that was a surprise to us when the customer showed up and he didn't have any room in his cab. I was kind of panicked, but we made it work.
Does it make you question, like, how is the rest of this build going to go if we didn't measure twice cut? Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. That's not something I considered. So I'm going to have to sit down and reevaluate my life choices. But we've also had people bring in a U-Haul, and it's a 16-foot long U-Haul, which was plenty of space.
Oh.
And that's with a quick build fuselage. So So that is the other option, is to pick stuff up in person, and we welcome that. We welcome customers and potential customers all the time. I love talking to people and getting to know who our customer is. It's not, you're not just a number. You know, every customer up till now is in my cell phone on a first name basis. You know, so
yeah. And the quick build, how much do you guys complete on a quick build? Like, what's the biggest?
On a quick build fuselage, we have to leave some of the tasks, of course, for the 51% rule. So we do most of the riveting aft of bulkhead 2, which is the main steel bulkhead. And we do a little bit ahead of bulkhead 2, but only enough to secure everything in place. So the customer has to button up the top of the forward skins, and then they have to install the forward longerons. There's 6 longerons in the front, and then they have to install bulkhead 1. So we do a pretty substantial amount of it. Oh, and they have to install a belly panel as well. But we do as much as we can get away with without coming anywhere near that 51% rule. So we try and make sure that we're following all regulations, because the last thing that we need is someone to disagree with what we're doing and raise a stink about it. So we don't go anywhere near that line.
Yeah. Engines and avionics. So I think from an avionics standpoint, I would imagine that most people that are buying these airplanes are going to keep it pretty close to original with some, minimalist avionics. Is that kind of what you've seen, or is there somebody out there putting a G3X in one of these?
It really is actually right down the middle. We have a lot of steam gauge people. I'm personally a steam gauge guy because the cost and simplicity, but we do have other people putting in glass panels, and 2 people that are toying with the idea of an autopilot even.
Wow.
Which to me, you would think that is beyond the scope of a replica, and it is. But again, people can make this what they want. They can customize it. They don't need to make a replica. So yeah, I'd say it's, as far as instrumentation, really right down the middle.
Yeah. Well, and now, with the Garmin GI 275s and the U Avionics AV30s, you can have a vintage looking panel round dial that has all the modern amenities of a full EFIS, right? Like,
yeah.
What about engines? So you mentioned the Rotax is what you're suggesting for at least 2 of the 3 platforms, right?
Yeah. So the Rotax is the one that fits inside the cal the best. Of course, the thing you hear everyone say about the Rotax is, I don't like the sound, and they complain about the sound. But we use an after muffler or a resonator, and that really kills the high-pitched sound of the Rotax, and it doesn't sound like a Rotax. And then probably half of our builders are using the Rotax, a lot of them big bore. And then we've got a customer doing a Lycon 0290, and we've got a Werner 7U, which is the radial. Mm-hmm. And then one of our customers is using UL power. So, but personally, if I build another one for myself, I'm going to go with a Rotax, just because the service is out there, the parts are out there. It's a well-known engine.
Yeah.
If you treat it like they want you to treat it, it's an incredibly reliable engine. So that's really the one that I prefer to see people put in their airplane, personally. But again, it's, this is the world of experimentals. You can use whatever you want as long as it's reliable, cost-effective, and will fit.
Yeah. And to be fair, actually, the reason we're talking today is we were on a Facebook group together, and I actually defended you because there's always somebody out there with an opinion, and somebody was like, it's not authentic. I was like, well, yeah, man, that's the point. And it's specifically why I, without even knowing you, wanted to defend you, is because I used a line in there that I'm sure that if you took an 80-year-old or an 8-year-old and you put them in the front seat of that airplane, the smile is going to be exactly the same, whether it's a Rotax powered replica or whether it's a $200,000 original Ryan, it's about keeping the vintage aircraft alive. And what a great way to do this, right? With modern safety and a modern engine in there. And I get, it's aviation, right? And Oshkosh is a great place to get 1,000 different opinions. But for me, I immediately loved what you were doing. And I love that they put the STL up on their page, because I truly believe that it is about keeping the vintage aircraft karma, I don't know, soul alive especially when students are learning in G1000 diamonds, right? But I don't know. Yeah. I immediately came to your defense.
Well, I appreciate that. And it's kind of funny because the people who are complaining, I think, are armchair enthusiasts, because we've been warmly welcomed by anybody who owns an original Ryan.
Yeah.
And initially, one of our concerns was, would this hurt the resale value on originals? Because we've seen it happen with other replicas in the past. It doesn't help with their resale value, or at least there's this notion that it's not going to help, and so people get defensive. But if anything, it's raised awareness about the ST and the PT types, and has helped those people out, hopefully. But they welcome us, so that's the fun part about it.
I mean, look at Carbon Cub, right? I mean, originally there were naysayers and saying, "Oh, you can't. That's not a Cub." I was like, "Well, listen, Carbon Cub and all these other companies. There's 3-4 companies out there producing a Cub-like aircraft, and it's done nothing but bring so much attention." I remember. So I'm a motorcycle rider, and I remember when the Long Way Round came out with BMW motorcycles, and then suddenly there was a craze for adventure riding. I think that the Carbon Cub community has experienced the same, this resurgence in how cool it is, and everybody wants one now. And I love what you're doing with this too, because it could easily turn out that way. So I appreciate what you're doing.
Thank you very much.
Well, I did tell you that we were going to keep it a little short, but there's one question that I always ask, and especially since you've flown and you've owned this airplane company. Now, feel free to say it's one of your own airplanes, but if you could fly any airplane in the world, past, present, future, money was no object, what airplane would that be?
If I could fly any plane in the world, probably a U-2.
Oh, okay.
All the way as high as we can go, just because that's a true experience, you know?
Yeah.
It's an ugly. I wouldn't want to own one. Never in my life would I want to own one, but it'd be a cool experience.
Well, isn't that funny? Like SpaceX and Blue Origin and stuff, you get 3 minutes in space, but in a U-2 you could like theoretically be on the edge of space for 12 hours at a time.
You know, even if you're not on the edge of space, it's the idea that, you know, you're, at least your brain's telling you are, right?
Yeah, absolutely. There was a great podcast that I was listening to. It's actually a business podcast, and they talked about Lockheed and Lockheed Skunk Works. I forget the name of the podcast, but it's really cool how they actually developed the U-2 at Y and all that stuff. But I'll send you the link afterwards. Nick, so before we go, how does everybody get a hold of you and the company? Where can we find you?
So first off, I want to say that we're really easy to get a hold of, but you can check out our website at timbertigeraircraft.com. My email address is Nick, N-I-C-K, at timbertigeraircraft.com. And of course, we have a pretty heavy Facebook presence as well. So the fun thing about Facebook, I know some people don't like it, some do, but we can upload a ton of photos for you to look at. It's a good way to keep up to date. So
awesome. Well, thank you, sir. I appreciate your time, and I would love to check in with you over the next couple months and see how this Oshkosh things go. And maybe before all the big media articles and all that stuff, I can say I knew you when.
Okay, absolutely.
All right.
Thanks. You so much.
No problem. I'm going to kill the recording and stand by just a second.
Okay.
So, I mean, wow is the first thing that I say to that great interview. I need some clarification. Somebody, Nick, you might be able to answer this. What's a U2? Explain. I mean, I know them as a band, obviously.
So that's
Bono, Adam Clayton.
the American spy plane, which flies up to, I think, 70,000 feet.
Oh, wow, okay. Right,
It goes up to 90, doesn't it?
In fact, the funny thing was I actually saw one of those on my very first aircraft flight. I was flying in the Air Training Corps over Kent, and there was one coming in over the English Channel. I didn't know what it was at the time.
Indeed. So thanks, as always, to Armando for that great little video. But we are going to have to press on, I'm afraid, because we've got quite a lot to cram into only 11 minutes. So go.
I have. So it's time for the book giveaway. Now the book is in my possession this week, but Nev's got the all important question for you. This is the book that we are giving away this week. It's Flying the Boeing 787.
Just give it to Andy. Just give it to Andy.
There we go. Just give it to Andy. There we go. Give it through the. There we go. Have a real book, Andy. Yeah, Flying the Boeing.
It's very thin. It's very thin.
That's because it's just an incredible aircraft to fly.
Well, there's no computers doing the flying for you, so it needs to.
There is on that.
Flying the 787 anyway. It's a bit like a mini Haynes manual. It goes through everything you need to know about starting the aircraft from cold right through to flight programming, and also all the important procedures.
In case you have to take yourself on holiday.
Yes, this is a good book to read if you are going to be flying on a 787. Just in case you get asked that question, have we got a pilot on board?
No, thanks. I'll let the people who know what they're doing do it, if you don't mind.
So, Nev, you have got this week's question.
I thought it should have been scrapping the 787 after that other story that we had earlier on.
Yes, quite.
But there you go.
Yes.
Anyway, this is called Flying the 787 by Captain Gib Vogel. And this week's question is, the first Boeing Dreamliner, which was manufactured with serial number 001, had a very Nev-esque registration.
Ooh.
What was this aircraft's registration number? So the first Boeing Dreamliner 787 MSN 001 had a very Nev-esque registration. So what was this aircraft's registration number? Podcast at planetalkinguk.com is the email address to send your answers to, and I shan't be here next week, but the fellows will read out the winner next week by picking a winner out of the hat, and then it'll be Carlos's turn to go down to the post office instead of mine.
Yay!
Oh, that'd be nice for him. Yes.
I know.
What a treat. Yeah.
So get your answers in for that. Get your answers in now. Moving swiftly on, I shall try and get this on the social media page as well if I get a chance this weekend. Also, this week, it's the Caption This is back again. We have our picture this week for the Caption This. It was on our Facebook page on Wednesday. And it's an interesting picture. It may have been artistically altered in some ways. Nev, what's the picture for our benefit of our audio listeners, quickly?
Oh yes, well, there's they are pushing an aircraft out of the drink by the looks of things, I would say.
And what's the airline, Nev?
Well, I haven't got the thing in front of me, but is it PTUK Airlines?
PTUK Airlines, yes. Yeah, we had to start our own airline. Mm-hmm. So, kicking off this week's caption is John, and John says, PTUK Airlines Chief Executive Carlos says the company have launched an investigation into their Fenland operations after a local farmer opened the Dyke sluice gate. Loyal passengers desperately try to rescue the aircraft.
Wow, okay.
Nev?
Nick says, push till you keel over. Airlines live up to its reputation.
I like what he done there. Andy, do you want to take the next one?
Yeah, what did you guys eat for dinner? Didn't agree with you, and definitely not the pilot.
Oh dear. I'm not quite sure what to do with
that. I think that's an evacuation from the toilet area. Anyway, Nick, do you want to take the next one?
Yeah, that one's from Neil. Avid fans managed to keep PTUK Airlines afloat.
And we're very grateful for that, actually, yes. Indeed. Jake says PTUK pushes to be leading edge in thrust reverser technology.
Oh, see what they did there.
And David says, obviously just starting the seaward part of the journey, and passengers need to get their sea legs.
dear.
PTUK's inaugural flight, says Bill, makes a splash by utilising self-loading cargo to perform pushback.
See, I think that's just efficient, personally. Yeah, I think it's efficient,
Mark says, back, the man in one ear's got wet feet.
We can't have that. That's really not okay, is it? No, let's be honest. And Nick, I think you have the last one.
Nigel says that when I said we were landing at Bournemouth, I did actually mean at the airport.
not on the beach. Yes, nice.
Right, what have we got in the chat room?
Let's have a look here. Surf City, here we come, is one from Micah. Captain Cruz is suggesting Shandong Airlines. I don't know what that's. Have I just accidentally sworn?
Mazouz says. Mizzou says not another flat battery.
Indeed. Moving on, Sturman saying undercover boss, new episode, most dedicated staff member. Very good. Captain Ridiculous Wit says you don't you hate it when your battery dies.
Alex is saying just a bit further, lads, and the rubber band will be ready.
Yes, that's it. Wind it up. Captain Ridiculous Wits is saying trying out the new man-powered push tugs. Again, very efficient, I think.
Captain Cruz, group of lifeguards preventing airplane from going further into the ocean.
PT UK, this is from Richard E. Flag, UK Airfields, saying PT UK celebrating more time afloat than the Monarch relaunch. Now that's very topical.
I'm going to finish on this one from Richard Adams in the chat room.
Yeah, okay, all right then.
Far too much Delta P.
I have no idea what that means.
Oh,
a lot of pressure.
Time for one more item, actually, really quickly from Alex.
Oh yes, of course, absolutely.
Very kindly gave us his update. He says, hi guys, hope you're well. Last time we spoke, you asked me to keep you up to date with how the flying career was progressing. Well, I'm happy to say that as of next week, I'm beginning my new career as a second officer on the Boeing 737 with SmileJet.
Wow.
And he says, safe to say I'm incredibly excited. Thanks for the many years of entertainment and keeping the passion alive. Speak again soon. And he says, P.S. the aerobatics may need to go on hiatus. Something about not being appropriate for commercial air transport.
let's give him a round of applause. Come on, guys.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's really I took part in flying upside down, he says. So,
indeed.
Well done, Alex.
I think that does very much deserve one of these. There you go. Look, very good. Well done.
Good.
Well done.
It's always fantastic getting your first airline job.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hope it all goes well. Enjoy the typewritten.
All right, don't frighten him.
Anyway,
fun parts.
Anyway, before we finish the show, we must mention, for those of you who might have missed it in the previous show, nearly all the team will be at the Duxford Battle of Britain Air Show on September the 17th. That's a Sunday, September the 17th. We'd love to if you could all be there. That'd be great. But me, Nev, and Matt will hopefully all be there at Duxford for that meetup at the air show. Don't forget there are still tickets available. If you go on the Duxford's website, you can get your tickets for the air show there. So that's the 17th of September at Duxford for that Battle of Britain air show, and hopefully we'll get to see some of you listeners there. But don't forget, let us know if you're going to be there, because we'd love to all get together, obviously, on site and have a good old chin wag, eh, Nev?
Absolutely.
Yeah, looking forward to it. And there may be a special guest as well, but we're just waiting for confirmation.
Under wraps. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, indeed. It's going to be a good one, though.
It's
going to be a good one. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So that is where we're going to bring episode 470 now, aren't we?
I know, scary,
to a close. We'll all be back hopefully next week, and we'll be bringing you back. We'll bring back with loads more great stuff, including the caption this and
25 seconds.
The answers to the book quiz as well. So that's it. Big thanks to our special guest, Andy, for joining us this evening. Thanks, Andy. Great to see you on there.
Pleasure.
And thanks to Nick, obviously, as well as always this week for all your hard work, and to John, and to Matt, and to Nev, and to Armando as well. So that's it. Have a great weekend, whatever you're up to. And don't forget, send us your feedback. We'd love to hear from you. And we'll see you next Friday on the show. Say goodbye, Nev.
See you. Take care. Have a good one.